I think this type of thing will hurt his chances to get a head coaching job, because I'm wondering about, look at, all men are pigs. We all know that, I guess, and women all know that. and I'm very in touch with it sometimes. But the reality says people who are going to hire you for a job look at things like this and they wonder about your decision making, and it could hurt him getting another job, in my mind.
And you tied it up of exactly where I was going. Perception is a lot when it comes to professional sports, especially as a head coach. Sonia, I mean, what is your perception of something like this? Now, listen, I don't fault. I hope Bill Belichick and this young lady get together, get married, and whatever. I mean, that's great for them and great for him and her. Maybe if they fall in love with each other, great. The point I was going to get to was, he wants to coach next year. That's what that's what everybody thinks. There's other coaches that may fail and he may step in. This is the news. And then this happens. And what is your perception of something like this?
So my perception, aside from the coaching, is disgusto Barfo. And I know they say age is nothing but a number, but I was literally just thinking this morning, not even related to this, about my own age and like what my mental cutoff would be. And I just feel like there's no maturity. This dude could like really be her grandfather. There is no maturity to that. I mean, what's she going to do? Help him fill out his, Social Security benefits? Or, I mean, maybe she's mature enough to know how to read paperwork. And then this is what she's doing. Her former boyfriend is old as well. I'm older, excuse me, gentlemen, is older. And this is just what she does. It's almost like she's chasing a chick, trying to see if she can outlive them, basically, so she can come into this money. When he does, I feel like it's not going to necessarily hurt him professionally. This girl used to be a cheerleader. They may have a few jokes in the locker room, what have you, about, him and maybe a Patriot or whatever cheerleader that he may be coaching that specific team. But I think, Bill has already, trailblazed his own path. He is who he is. You can't undo the success that he had when he was coaching. And this is just a personal thing. We all have personal things aside from our professions. And this just happened to be in the limelight. I don't think it's going to affect him professionally at all.
It probably won't last long enough for it to affect him, right? I can't see that.
That's another thing.
Wait, so you're saying, Sonia, wait.
He's in good health and he's not on his way to meet the Grim Reaper. She's going to be on to the next, 60 plus person that looks, she needs to scope out some nursing homes.
Sonia, you're saying Bill Belichick's going to be applying for Social Security benefits?
Well, he's
eligible. You think he needs some money on that?
He's past that.
He ought to be collecting. He's not.
He can collect his full benefits. He could collect the max, I guess, they pay.
He's only like 10 years younger than you, Jack.
Yeah.
Anyway, Keith, let's turn to college football. And guess what? We're going to talk about a coach and a player for a change. This is very interesting. So,
something on there too. What's your show turning into here? Okay.
I know Ben Venable, Oklahoma head coach, gets a pay boost, 6-year deal ahead of their move to SEC territory. And you're already shaking your head.
I don't get it.
All right.
I don't get it. He goes 6-6 or 6-7 2 years ago, his first year, with better talent. He had pretty good talent left behind by Lincoln Riley. Last year they have a bit of a better year. I think they were 10 and I want to say they were 10-3. Maybe it was 11-3. No, it had to be 10-3. But he's already got a contract. You really haven't proven yourself. You get a 2-year track record, one okay, one not very good. And why are you doing this? I mean, if they fall on their face here the first couple of years in the SEC, this is going to look really bad for Oklahoma, and it's going to cost them a lot of money when they want a new coach. So to me, they extended a guy who nobody's out there trying to entice him away. So I'm confused what Oklahoma's doing here.
Are they maybe extending him because of moving into SEC? They want some stability, maybe, Keith. I'm trying to think of anything that I agree with you, but is it because they're moving that they did this? It
could be. I mean, I'm going to assume that the average pay for a coach in the SEC is probably substantially higher than the average coach in the Big 12, and maybe they wanted to get him more in line with some other coaches at his level, but. again, I don't see why you need to rush into it before you've even seen them play a game in the SEC. And if I'm an Oklahoma fan, Max Venable is a really good coordinator. He was a great coordinator at Clemson. He was picking and choosing his jobs before he went to Oklahoma. But we know that not every coordinator is a great head coach, and he has not shown that to me that I would give him that level of commitment at this point. But they know better than I do, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose too. A running back that's kind of gone under the radar, last year, Oklahoma State running back Ollie Gordon, Doker Walker Award winner, really good back. I think he was like seventh in the top 10 anyway with the Heisman Trophy awards. He got up in there. People are saying maybe he's the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman Trophy this year, even though he's a running back. So, Keith, I mean, can the running back make a comeback here? Can the Heisman Trophy winner again go back to running back, leading into maybe the pay increasing in the NFL? If this happens, I think this is the first time since I want to see King Henry won it way back when he played as a running back.
Derrick Henry?
Yes. Did we freeze, Keith? Did we freeze?
He's shocked. He's so shocked.
Shocked me. Sorry about that. Somehow I'm on airplane mode. I got all kinds of weird shit going on here. Excuse my French. The power went out. My computer's like taking over life of its own here. It's my own fault for yelling at all the AI around the house.
Yes, there you go.
When the machines take over, I'm going to be the first to go. I can tell you right now. What was I talking about? Oh, yes. The running. This is a cyclical thing. Henry was the last guy to win, but before the quarterbacks were winning every year, running backs were winning every year. Pretty much. You look in the 80s, especially 70s and 80s. It was pretty much running back a trophy, just like it's a quarterback trophy now. It'll change. Defenses will change. They'll catch up with the passing games a little bit. And I think running backs will have their day again, and then it'll cycle through again. So again, running backs, they are devalued monetarily, right? But it doesn't mean they're not still important to most teams' game plans. So
I agree, and he was responsible.
I'm skeptical about that. I'm skeptical about the running backs making a comeback because of the rule changes and how the trajectory of the game is going to a different era where everybody's injury safe first. And so, a guy like Earl Campbell, Jim Brown, Adrian Peterson, will we see guys like that anymore? It's just tough. I don't know. You don't see that battering ram running back anymore, or Emmitt Smith or somebody like that. Or
even Derrick Henry to a lesser extent than Earl Campbell, let's say, but he still was that kind of not lumbering, but banging back. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you may be right. The rule change may prohibit it. But I mean, throughout history, in most sports, things are cyclical, and the offenses catch up with the defenses, and the defenses catch up with the offenses, and we make changes. And it may take a decade, but I do think you'll see it probably at that run again. And because coaches are pretty smart, and they figure out a way once they figure out a way to stop the way teams pass for just such prolific numbers today, then it'll switch a little bit. But
if you look at the drafts, right, they're drafting pass rushers, edge rushers, they're drafting the cornerbacks, the defensive backs, and the defenses are gearing up for the pass, and an offense will take advantage of that one day where they say, okay, you got all these pass defenders, we're going to run the ball down your throat. The Eagles are like that when they decide to run, and as you saw Kansas City, they ran the ball really well in the Super Bowl to win that game. Pacheco was the main really offensive weapon for Kansas City in the Super Bowl. So it does have its moments, and I agree with Keith as far as that goes. So let's talk a little bit about quarterback Michael Penix. He signs a contract with the Atlanta Falcons. He's and it's a decent one. It's a $22.8 million contract, 5th-year option, $13.6 million signing bonus. If Atlanta gets off to a really slow start, I think I've asked you this before. If he gets to 2-5, I mean, Penix Jr., does he get it? Does he get in the game? If it's at the end of the year, I would imagine if the Falcons are not in the playoff race, does Penix Jr. get in the game? And does this cause a quarterback controversy next year if he gets in and does well? What do you think, Sonia?
First of all, the fact that they're paying him that much as a rookie is insane. I remember when quarterbacks came in and you could calculate that they were only making like maybe upper thousands a year. 22 million is literally like it's almost like he's already exercised his 5th-year option or the first year out of a rookie contract, in my opinion. I do believe that because James and I both are very familiar with how Atlanta does their team, being that we are in the same division. Atlanta is very finicky when it comes, in the past with their coaching. If they see they're dropping like 3 or 4 in a row, they're already looking at who's coming in next. Last year, we saw it basically that Taylor Heineke came in and they were very verbal saying, oh, no, we haven't benched Desmond Ridder. We're just, just bringing someone else in. But at the end of the day, it really was they were benching him. They brought him in to see who was basically playing better, trying to get some wins at the end of the season. And I honestly believe if Kirk Cousins doesn't prove to be who they thought he was with this organization, I'll give it maybe if they drop 4 or more. So I'm saying 4 because Atlanta doesn't want to go. They don't want to go back to this negative number. They want to try to win. They have a win now mentality. I feel like if Atlanta starts to drop 4, especially 4 in a row specifically, then we may see a debut of Penix Jr. Or if, unfortunately something happens with Kirk Cousins, we're definitely going to see Penix come into play.
Well, Keith, we got to let you go. So I'll give you the last word. I mean, 3 quarterbacks in 2 years. What are your thoughts? No matter the year, do they keep Kirk Cousins as a starting quarterback?
I think unless he gets hurt, yes, he will be the starting quarterback there. Maybe the last 2 games if they're totally out of the picture. And as I said before, if they don't win, then there's going to be some people in trouble there because, first of all, they didn't hire the Super Bowl winning coach they had a chance to hire. They bring in a quarterback that they're paying a ton of money to, and then they don't give him any help, basically, to win this year, which they're all in on. It makes no sense to me. So.
Okay, Keith Engel, TGI Sports. Thanks for stopping in, Keith. You have a great day.
Have a good one.
Have a great Sunday, guys.
Take care.
All right. And we'll take a quick break and be right back on the other side. We still got plenty of NFL to talk about. We'll be right back.
This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
Hello, this is Paul
Come on, Dr.
Semendinger,
Paul.
award-winning author and the host of the Dr. Sem Yankee Show and the Start Spreading the News podcast. And you are watching the Big Football Show, the very best football show in the entire world. And it's here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Enjoy.
I love Dr. Paul. Thanks for that, Dr. Paul. We're going to get back to some football talk here. And Barry Sanders, the great running back of the Detroit Lions. Some people consider maybe the best of all time. Had a heart scare, a medical issue where I guess he had to be taken to the hospital or to the doctor's office at the very least. And it was a problem he had with his heart. And of course, he says that the doctor encouraged him to be more vigilant with his health. Jack is pretty much a historian here. He can say things off the top of his head. Jack, Barry Sanders, some people think the greatest of all time. He definitely had a unique style, a stop and go, slashing, a little bit of power there. It gets to a point in your life, I guess, as anybody. Same thing with athletes where, you kind of lax off a little bit and something can happen. But in your opinion, anyway, where does Barry Sanders rank? I mean, Jim Brown, you've got a lot of great running backs, Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson. Where do you think Barry Sanders ranks amongst the best of the best?
Yeah, he would be a top 5. We tend to take a great player from a past generation and put him on Mount Rushmore. He's at the very top, but we don't allow anyone to pass him. It's going to be very difficult going forward, in the future to say that any basketball player is greater than Michael Jordan. It's going to be hard to say any running back is greater than Jim Brown. Actually, Walter Payton was a greater all-around player than Jim Brown, and that he blocked and Jim Brown didn't block. But we think of the time when Jim Brown was so dominant when he played because he was an athlete ahead of his time. And by the time Barry Sanders came around, we'd seen already some other great running backs. So it wasn't like he was the absolute first. It's funny, Barry Sanders' dad was a big Jim Brown fan. He always said Jim Brown was better than his son. That's because he really loved Jim Brown. Same thing with pitchers. We look at Sandy Koufax, and are we ever going to say there's a pitcher better than Sandy Koufax? We're going to say pitchers had better careers, but we're not going to want to put someone ahead of Sandy Koufax. So we're going to want to put a hockey player ahead of Wayne Gretzky. We get caught up on these legendary players once they've left their mark in their era, and that the guys that come after, we never want to put them ahead of them. But Barry Sanders, he ranks as a top 5 himself, Jim Brown, Walter Payton, O.J. Simpson, and I guess, you like Earl Campbell's style. It's not the most eye-catching style, but what he brought to the table. And of course, you could add a couple more. I could say for peak value, for 1 or 2 seasons, John Riggins was unstoppable, for example, but his name obviously isn't going to enter the discussion. Just like when you talk about the all-time great centers, Moses Malone's name doesn't enter the discussion. But I'll tell you this, Moses at his very best may have been better than all of them.
It's a good point. If you're going to talk about, go ahead, James.
Well, I love this discussion. That's my favorite position of the game. And as Jack alluded to, John Riggins, he's probably the oldest back to get 1,000 yards. So you have to consider a lot of things like that. There's too many variables to just have one Mount Rushmore. There should be several because Barry Sanders versus Emmitt Smith, there's a debate heavily about these two type of runners. They're two different style runners, two different style teams. One had a fullback, one didn't. There's so many different things you got to include there. It's just a different. There's too many different genres, too many variables, but there's so many great running backs that just include, man. Curtis Martin, Jerome Bettis, looking back at like you said, Jim Brown, Walter Payton, man, those guys are just incredible. O.J. Simpson, Earl Campbell, man, it's just hard to really choose. I have a top 5, and I would have Barry in the top 3 for me because of the style of running that he was, but I have Jim Brown and Walter Payton in the top 2. Those are my picks. Yeah.
You've got great running backs, and then you got legends, right? John Riggins is not a legend. Eric Campbell, almost, but not a legend.
Earl Campbell.
Yeah, but you start talking about Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith. I mean, these guys are legends. And when it comes to running, and like quarterbacks, right? We have a lot of great quarterbacks, but there are a few that are legends. And this is where the discussion may take a turn. I mean, we could put, like we talked before the show, you could put asterisks next to almost every record there is. The games have gotten, have increased the amount of, so there's a better chance to rush for more yards and to throw for more yards. But really, I mean, if you looked at these running backs and what they did in the time they played, there are legends and then there's greatness. And, there is, to me, a difference. So anyway, go ahead, Jack.
We don't take variables into account as much as we should. I love Jim Brown, not only as a player, as an activist as well. He had a personality that seemed to be bigger than life. I know he had off the field issues. I'm fully aware of that, things that I, didn't approve of. Okay. But I really did admire him, the way he, took on social issues beyond being a player. But if I were the Jet GM now, and I had to make a decision for the Jets, and it was only my decision, and the whole Jet organization was waiting on it, who could I have, Jim Brown or Walter Payton? I would take Walter Payton, because Walter Payton would block for Aaron Rodgers. Jim Brown would refuse. Okay? He refused to block when he played for the Cleveland Browns. And his coach, Blanton Collier would, argue with him, you got to block. And Jim Brown had such a big personality and was so great, he could argue back that he wasn't going to do it. And when his career was over, Jim Brown admitted he should have blocked. If he had a chance to do it all over again, he would have. He admitted he was wrong, but he didn't block when he played. I mean, he was just like a great, great running back. And Jim Brown was so hard to bring down, too, and he would run at other players. Guys on defense were actually scared of him.
Okay, so there you go, Jim Brown. Sonia, there is some Carolina Panther news, believe it or not. Carolina jumped the Giants to get the running back from TCU, Jonathan Brooks, a great running back in college. The Giants, of course, had a running back situation with Saquon Barkley leaving, and we're looking to draft. It looked like they might have gone after Jonathan Brooks, but Carolina jumped him to get that running back. I mean, Carolina has a lot of needs, and of course, running back is one of them. But they have a pretty good little running back room right now in Carolina.
Yeah, so they are very excited about having Jonathan Brooks join the locker room. I mean, let's be honest, we're looking for some type of igniting after the whole Christian McCaffrey rise to fame, and then subsequent trading him to the 49ers. So they got Jonathan Brooks at the 46th pick in the draft. And even though people were kind of like shocked that we did that, it actually ended up being a good investment for us going into the new season. Now he is actually recovering from a torn ACL. Let's be honest on that. He had an injury already. But the coach down there, Mr. Canales, Dave Canales, and all the staff, the running back coaches and what have you, thinks that, he's going to be good to go at some point before the season starts, like with OTAs or what have you. And I think that's why it raised eyebrows, was the fact that he did have this injury that he was trying to overcome. And why would the Panthers draft someone that's already injured, especially with an ACL? That's pretty, significant. We've seen Aaron Rodgers miss the entire season with that. However, Brooks is significantly younger, so, they recover a little faster. And he had already kind of started undergoing some of his recovery before we started OTAs. So, we're hopeful on that. We need to get some help with Chuba Hubbard. Right now, Chuba is the new Christian McCaffrey, as he was when McCaffrey was still there. When McCaffrey would be injured, Chuba would come in and what have you. But typical Carolina, they are known to put the burden of the game literally on the running back. And so keeping them from wearing down Chuba, we need Brooks to be able to heal up pretty quickly so that we can go ahead and get him acclimated to the team and get him what needs to be done so that when he goes in, he'll be set for the field and what have you. So that's where we're going to be looking to draft the next player to help him out and all of that good stuff. So yeah.
No, you got to give the Panthers a lot of credit for drafting Brooks, knowing he won't be able to help them immediately. Teams tend to overlook players who might have to sit out a year. You know, everyone has this urgency. You know, I'm reading this book now called When the NBA Was War. And it said when Red Auerbach drafted Larry Bird, he drafted him number 6 overall, knowing Bird wasn't going to play for the Celtics that year. They'd have to wait a year, but he was looking into the future, while the teams that went ahead of Auerbach, you know, were drafting players who they thought could help them immediately. So kudos to Carolina for, you know, looking ahead and having that vision.
And their wide receiver, they drafted a couple years ago, Wingo, too, didn't have a great season last year. They thought that was going to be a heck of a team, Bryce Young and Wingo together. And, of course, he's looking to get better, too, because, of course, Carolina is also going to have to pass, and hopefully they can get some kind of passing game going along with their running game. So we'll see if Wingo does
to piggyback off what Jack said, we can go all the way back to Willis McGahee. He had a terrible knee injury, and Buffalo still picked him up in the first round, and he went on to have a really decent career. So I think looking at Brooks is actually a very good running back, underrated draft pick for him to pick him up by Carolina. And with the acquisitions of the offensive line, that was key for Carolina. So Carolina's going to sneakily have a next season. It's just whether or not they get ahead to the Saints and the Falcons. We'll see how that goes.
And I don't care what
I
they're not winning a division. Wait.
Hold on, Jack. Hold on 1 second before you start spewing hate. James, your connection broke up just a little bit. What did you say about Carolina that we might have? And then it said pop, pop, pop. What did you say?
I said they're going to have a bounce back season. Sneakily going to really have. They made some really good picks in the off season, and with their offensive line, I think they're going to do a lot better than people think. But I say it's yet to be determined whether or not they'll be better than the Falcons and the Saints.
And
James
the
is already
Bucs.
predicting that the Panthers double their win total from last year. That's what James.
I mean, doubling is 4 games. Come on, Jack.
Well,
Don't be
you know, it's a safe
Don't be
bet.
funny.
James guarantees that they're going to double it. But let me
Yes,
the
yes,
point
yes.
of the season, it's not wins and losses. It's whether Bryce Young takes the next step. By the end of the season, the Panthers have to know that Bryce Young is their guy. If they leave with the same feeling after this that they had after this year, he has 2 years in the league already and he's not progressing, I would be very alarmed if I'm Carolina. Very, very alarmed.
Yes.
So the Panthers and Bryce Young, that's what it comes down to. Not wins and losses, but they're not going to win the division.
And we're not saying we're winning the division, and doubling our wins is just 4 games, Jack. Okay, so first of all,
that's his
first of
prediction,
all,
not mine.
yeah, that's all right. We play them in the opener, and we'll see what happens then. But Mac, I thought you were going to talk about the whole team debacle as a whole, about the Panthers, and you know, David Tepper with this renovation idea. We legit may be moving our team. That's what I thought you were going to talk about.
Well, I wanted to talk about the players more than that old news. That's been out there for.
No, it ain't old. There is stuff
we
still
talked
coming
about
out.
we talked about it on the show, I think last week, and we talked about it during the week a little bit. Tepler, where's he going to go? Who's going to
No,
take
not
that?
him.
Well,
Yeah, I got you. Don't worry.
I mean,
Jack
who's
is
gonna-
already looking like
who's
he.
gonna- I mean, who's
No, I mean, I know we're losing viewers along the way, you know, with Carolina.
Wow.
Talk. I mean, come on.
Because you guys
Let's
got
get
grandfather
Carolina
Aaron
Panthers
Rodgers
fan. Who's
that got hurt on the first snap. Are you kidding me?
So
Wait,
anyway,
Carolina
Riddle
Panthers,
Bone?
are we kidding? We're talking about a 2-15 team that's signed an injured, you know, drafted an injured running back.
Okay.
Even though I like the
Mac,
move.
you can
I
move
like the
along
move.
now.
that's what Jack was hoping. Let's talk a little bit about the Saints. The Saints, the New Orleans Saints. Kamara leaves camp last day. Players are reacting. Most of them are saying, as most former NFL players that I've talked with, let him handle his business. That's his business. We're trying to improve. Now, listen, Kamara, whether you like him or not personally, what he's done off the field or not. He is a very good running back. One of the keys to the Saints' victory, to them having a winning season. Does this hurt the Saints? Will Kamara hold out? It doesn't really matter to you, James, if Kamara holds out. And part B of the question is, if the Saints don't do it this year, do the Saints clean house and start to rebuild instead of pushing contracts down the line and keeping veterans? What do they do? So part A and part B, what do you got for me?
Mac, that's a great question. Look, Kamara, from 2017 to now, his numbers are, I was just talking about this on Friday night with the fellas. His numbers are comparable to that of Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's got 5,000 rushing yards, 4,000 receiving yards in 7 seasons, 54 touchdowns for rushing, and about 29 for receiving. This guy's he's done well for the team. And I mean, despite losing Drew Brees and the coach, he had a tough couple of years last season, but I think an offensive line has dropped down. We're doing better this year. I think we're projected to have a better offensive line this year, a new run scheme, a new offensive scheme. And he understands this and understands that his next year in 2025 has $30 million against the cap, and it's not guaranteed money. So there's no way the Saints are going to pay that. So he wants to get guaranteed money for this year and next year. We just saw McCaffrey get $38 million for 2. He's not going to get that kind of money. But somewhere near, he's using his leverage, because right now we only have an unproven running back in Kendre Miller, and a really terrible down year for Williams last year. So Kamara is the back that we want to have, even though he's going to start the season at age 29, and we know the drop off for running backs in their age is 30. We still want to have him because he's going to be the source of this new scheme. So he understands that. He left the last game of minicamp, and I think he'll come back. But they'll pay him. They're going to give him 2 years. Probably they'll meet in between the way. He's not going to get $38 million, but he'll get a decent amount, and he'll be ready by the start of training camp. But to answer your question, whether or not if they don't do well this season, yeah, they're going to clean house. There's a lot of older players in there that they gave some money a couple years ago. It's time to just get rid of some people. You'll probably get rid of the coach, keep that offensive coordinator, probably turn him into the coach, because we just picked him up, Clint Kubiak, and just start from ground up. I mean, you got a lot of young players. There should be no reason that you shouldn't do better, because you have young talent at the receiver position, and you did draft a running back, and you're getting some guys on the defense as well that are relatively young. And then you pick up Chase Young. Hopefully he does well this season. You give him another contract if he does well. We'll see. I think they do well though with this new scheme.
They were 9-8 last year. You know, people under the impression that the Saints were a losing team because they didn't make the playoffs. They just
I cannot believe how you are. I cannot believe how you are literally ramping up the Saints and you have so much hatred towards the Panthers. Get out of our division. Get out of our division. You could not wait to bring the pom-poms out for James. Oh, they're 9-8.
No. Listen, the Saints have some weapons. I mean, Michael Thomas, who they released, I haven't heard him signing on with anyone else. Did he sign on with Cleveland, or did I hear it wrong? Did he sign on with anyone?
He didn't sign with anybody.
He's been injury-prone. But I will say this about the Saints. It's not an emergency, but they're going to have to address the quarterback position. Heaven forbid Derek Carr has a good season, because sometimes he does have a good season, but he's not a franchise quarterback. This guy is mediocre. He's too good to be a backup, but not good enough to be a franchise quarterback. He's called a tweener, kind of like in basketball, a guy who can't play guard because he doesn't dribble that well, but he's not big enough to play power forward, but he's still an okay player. But if heaven forbid he has a really good year, and then the Saints decide to give him one of these big quarterback extensions and pay him amongst the best guys, and then he's going to be a total bust after that. and it's going to set the franchise
That's
back. I'm
fine.
telling you now, they're the ones that should have gotten Michael Penix, the Saints. They're the
Right.
ones who should have found a way to get him instead of the Falcons.
The
Well, they
car has
needed the
run out of
offensive lineman
gas.
that they got.
The car is
They
out
needed
of
the
gas.
offensive lineman that they picked up. But I mean, let's not be, let's not be too hasty in how we moving quarterbacks, because I like the situation that we did with the 5th round draft pick in the sneaky. He's laughing. Talk about
I'll tell you, let me tell you why I'm laughing, James. Because every team thinks they solved all their problems with free agents and rookie.
I didn't say that. Not us.
Every team thinks their team is going to be better, and they address the situation. We really don't know until the season starts, right? Honestly, I mean, I could tell you the Giants had an A plus or A minus draft. That does mean nothing to me. They've had an A plus draft for the last 3 years and haven't done nothing. The point that I was trying to make is you have right now Atlanta Falcons with a better quarterback, Tampa Bay, who improved unbelievable last year, and now the Saints, who have not really invested in the future. They've kept the vets on, they've pushed salaries down to keep them, and this has been what they've been doing the last couple of years. Has been their mentality. If that doesn't work this year, and say you end up in 3rd place, or you miss the playoffs, just say you miss the playoffs. That was the point I'm making. What do they keep
Why
doing
wouldn't
the
they
same
end up in
over and
4th
over
place?
again?
I'm confused.
Well, whatever happens, I'm just saying they missed the playoffs. Do they keep that mentality? Now, whether they fire the coach or not, I don't know. But I mean, something's got to change, or they're still going to, being 9-8 or 8-9 every year really doesn't do anything except you get in the playoffs. That's all it does, maybe. And
I mean, they've done a
Well,
slight
the Buccaneers
reset.
won a game with 9-8 in the playoffs.
A slight reset.
Right.
They've done a slight reset with some of their players, for sure.
That's what I'm thinking. They're getting a little old in the tooth on defense, and as you said, Kamara's 29 years old, and we'll see what happens. And Derek Carr, as Shaq says, is not a franchise quarterback, but he's not a bad quarterback. And you can go places with a quarterback that's not bad if you have a team around him, right? And that's what the Saints don't have right now, and that's one of the big problems. Little New York Giants news, as you know, they got a new defensive coordinator. Wink Martindale is gone, and his philosophy was blitz, 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 blitz. That's going to change under the new head coach, Corshon Bowen, who is more of a he was with the Tennessee Titans last 3 years for the Jaguars. I think it was the Jags for the last 3 years. A lot more zone defenses and a lot less pressure on the cornerbacks. Maybe it works, maybe it don't. I don't know. I will see what happens. So I'm just putting a question mark next to the Giants. And
my favorite play on the Giants, Kevin Thibodeau. Okay, I've been pretty critical of him. And my thing is with Thibodeau, this is his 3rd year he's going into. And if you're really that great of a talent, and he has a ton of ability, you should be the star player on defense. You shouldn't be a 3rd wheel on the line behind, Lawrence and now Burns, who came from the Panthers to the Giants. You should be a leader. I mean, a leader on the field. I don't mean leadership qualities. I was going to compare to Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, I don't know how he's perceived in the locker room, but he's the best player on their defensive unit. And you don't get that from Thibodeau. He shows up for certain plays, and he looks like he's a Hall of Famer. And then he's going to take 2 games off, and he's going to be missing in action while he's on the field. And he's got to show a lot more consistency. That's why I haven't been high on him. I want to be upfront about that right now. I want to see him emerge as a star because he's got the ability to be such, but he only shows it periodically. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, he had 12 sacks on the season. He got those over a period of a few games for the most part, and it's a 17-game season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jack. I agree with that. I mean, if that's what Thibodeau is, I don't know if Burns is better than Thibodeau or not. I guess maybe picking up that defensive end might help Thibodeau get some more sacks. We'll see what happens.
Y'all don't get much out of Burns. He gave his best years to Carolina.
All right. Spoken like a true Carolina Panthers fan.
It sounds a little bitter that he left.
Yes.
Because,
I've got a list of the 5 worst head coaches, excuse me, according to Bleacher Report, in history of football, guys. And you're gonna have different opinions, and that's what I want. That's why I'm doing this. Because I could think of a couple off my head that should have been included in the top 5.
Oh.
So let's start here with David Shula, number 5, 1992, hired by Cincinnati. They had a shot to sign Bill Cowher, believe it or not, as their head coach, but they stayed inside their organization. They promoted David Shula, son of Don Shula, one of the greatest coaches in the history of football. They went 19-52 in 4 seasons. He was their wide receivers coach. For the Browns before they.
Can I say something? When Don Shula, his dad, was at the height of his powers as a coach, Don Shula is considered one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. The Philadelphia Eagles were thinking seriously of signing David Shula when he was 23 years old. You heard me right, 23 years old to be their head coach, okay? Because they figured, this Shula magic, the dad is going to help him, and they didn't quite do it. So David Shula, signed with the Bengals. Ironically, Boomer Esiason, who was his quarterback during the time, didn't think David Shula was a bad coach during the time there. He didn't think that, but he had one incident where one of the players, grabbed David Shula's cap off his head. And that player should have been suspended for the next game, whatever. And I remember Boomer Esiason saying later on, it bothered him. He didn't like it. It made his coach look bad, and it diminished his coach. And it just didn't quite work out for David Shula, with the Shula name and all with the Bengals. But in all fairness, the Bengals maybe didn't have that good of a team, but I could understand them being one of the top 5. Just didn't work out.
Yeah, and being 19-52 in 4 years is kind of tough to overcome, right? So that was number 5. Number 4 is Hugh Jackson, Cleveland Brown head coach, 2016, went 1-31 over 2 seasons, and believe it or not, they brought him back the 3rd year. He went 2-5-1 before being fired. Of course, he had a pretty good job as a coordinator. He was head coach of the Raiders, had a 500 year, but that's number 4 on the all.
Cleveland, he was awful. Baker Mayfield hated him when he was starting at Cleveland, and he didn't do much of a job. I mean, the record speaks for itself.
Yes. So I mean, the question to me is why you bring a guy back after only winning 1. That was kind of crazy to do. Again,
the Giants brought Bill Parcells back. He only won 3 games his first year.
We're talking over 2 years, 1 game in 32, Jack, or 31. That's a little different than 3-11. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, Hugh Jackson is number 4, which I think these two could have been in a different position. But anyway, let's go to number 3, Bobby Petrino, Atlanta Falcons head coach in 2007, lasted only 13 games before he went back to college. So he's after the 13th game, he said, "Guess what? I'm out." This was the time that dogfighting with
Michael Vick.
Yes, that was the year of that. So he kind of had to navigate through that. Don't wish it on anybody. That's his star quarterback. Ends up in a lot of trouble. But he decided to go back. I think it was Arkansas. I think that's where he either came for or went back to. Supposedly, he only left them a note in the locker room saying, "See you later, guys." So that's number 3, and that's 1 year. I mean, Vic. I mean, I kind of feel for the guy on that one, you guys, right?
Well, if he quit on the team 1 year, 13 games isn't enough of a body of work. It's awful. But look at Nathaniel Hackett. He was head coach of the Denver Broncos his first year. What did they fire him 11 games into his first season? And now we're so lucky to have him as the Jet offensive coordinator.
So Jack says Go ahead, Sonia.
Were you saying you felt bad for Michael Vick or for the
For the head
Or for-
coach. For the head
oh
coach.
yeah. I mean,
mean, you
that
know,
was
I
that
mean-
was such a bad scandal. I mean, he was attacked almost as if it was him personally, and it was just happening in Vic's house in Virginia. Vic wasn't even there; it was his brother, really, and it was a whole debacle about that. And then, of course, he got prison time for that, and it just bled over. This is always what I talk about when personal bleeds over into profession. But this time, the quarterback's behavior was so flagrant that it bled over into the coaching and just into the whole organization. I think that's what really happened. And he just basically caught the bad one because of Vic's situation.
I mean, as a head coach, I mean, James, you know, you depend on, and Vic at that time was a very I don't know if he was a great quarterback, but he's electrifying.
He was
right?
decent. It was very good.
He could
Totally
change the outlook of the game, right?
But-
So, I
Well,
mean,
he then went to the Michael Vick then went to the Eagles and had a great second act there.
right. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying, he was,
Because
he
the
was
Falcons wouldn't take him back. They didn't want
you're
him
not,
back
you're
after
not
that.
listening. You're not considered
A
a great
very
quarterback.
contrite Michael Vick came out of prison and told you that he just didn't do the things that was necessary to be better or greater than what he was when he was in Atlanta. So I mean, I get, and like Jack said, he went back. He got a whole nother $100 million contract when he went to the Eagles, and so he redeemed himself and redeemed his career. But going back to Bobby Petrino, I think he's a part of that list more so because he didn't have the quantity or he didn't build up a huge, large number of games to even be considered on that list. I think it's just more about him morally and what he's done off the field, how he left college, how he left the NFL, what he's done. He got into a car wreck, cheating on his wife. It's a lot of stuff that goes into him being on that number. So it's Petrino is more so. I think people just like him personally.
Wow, you're
Because,
popping
I mean,
like crazy.
I mean, so many other different names you can put in the top five, huh?
You're popping like
audio-
crazy.
You can't hear me?
He probably needs to.
Yeah, we can hear you,
Oh,
but
bring
you're
it back.
popping. Maybe
Sorry about
maybe don't get so close to the mic. Maybe Jim, sit back a little bit. Maybe that'll help you out a little bit when you're talking. You know, talk now. Let's see if you pop. Mic check.
Yeah, I was talking about
Can you
Bobby
hear me?
Petrino. Is it okay?
All right. Yes, that's
Much
a
better.
little
I
better.
don't want
All right, cool.
I don't want to hear James repeat what he said about Bobby.
Anyway, I didn't say that. I said say something, Jack. Relax. So anyway, Petrino was left off. I don't think he deserved there. Jack brings up number 2, and I really don't know if he deserves to be there either. And that's Nathan Hackett, right? He had 1 year as a head coach of the San Diego Chargers.
Less than a year.
It's right, exactly. His time clock management got him in trouble all the time there. He did have a future, maybe great quarterback. That's still unresolved with Herbert. They scored the fewest amount of points in the NFL that year. Again, I mean, is one season or is 13 games or 14 games big enough to get on that list? Is that better than, I mean, is he worse than Richie Kotite, for example, who was a terrible coach, or Joe Judge, who was a terrible coach for the Giants? I mean, is he that bad? And I don't think he's that bad. I think he's not a great head coach by any means. But to put him on his top 5, I kind of disagree with. What do you guys think?
I don't even
Which-
know who he is. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Nick,
That's
who
how
you talking
his
about?
Well, with Nathaniel Hackett, it's
Yeah.
enough of a body of work. If you want to talk about the worst coaches, you have to set an amount of time. I mean, I think you have to say a couple of years. Anyone can have a bad year. It doesn't necessarily make you a bad coach. Look at all the coaches in reverse who are outstanding their first year, and then after that, not as good. Okay, so you could look at it different ways. To me, you got to have a body of work.
Agree. And again, you know, Hackett is now the offensive coordinator, or maybe is the offensive coordinator of the Jets.
Well, yeah, they're keeping him as the offensive coordinator because they don't want to antagonize Aaron Rodgers. That's why the Jets are doing it. If Aaron Rodgers wasn't the quarterback, Nathaniel Hackett wouldn't be the offensive coordinator. I think Aaron Rodgers is indirectly calling his own plays this season because technically Nathaniel Hackett will send in the plays, but Nathaniel Hackett will know exactly what Rodgers wants to do in all type of situations. And because him and Rodgers are very close, they allow that, Robert Saleh's allowing that relationship to go on. To fire Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator and keeping him on the staff in another type of position, that's going to antagonize Rodgers to a degree. So right now, there's still a honeymoon period to just have with Aaron Rodgers. But if they have another year, if they just don't have a successful year, that comes to an end. I think, the Jets are going to make their own decisions whether Rodgers likes it or not.
I hope so.
Let's be honest. Rodgers comes in and tries to make it his team no matter where he is. He's a takeover quarterback. He did it in Green Bay all the way to getting McCarthy fired on Aaron Rodgers' actual birthday. And he's, running the show. But like Jack said about the Panthers earlier, we're losing views just talking about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers right now, Max. So let's move on.
Okay. Urban Meyer is the number one coach on the list. And I could see him being in the top 5. I don't know if he's number 1 or not, but he really came in, into his coaching as the first-time NFL coach. No experience at all. Comes into the Jags. He's calling the assistant coaches idiots. He's kicking the kicker and swearing at him. He wins 2 games. He stays behind in Cincinnati after Cincinnati lost, and he's dancing with a woman and it's not his wife. All these optics that were kind of.
No, he wasn't. No, a woman came for picture and sat on his lap quickly.
From the video I saw, she was dancing, but that's okay. The point I'm trying to make is all the optics that kept coming and coming at the owner GM. He gave it. He let it go. He let it go. He let it go. And finally, after kicking the kicker and swearing at him, that was it. Urban Meyer was said not to even know who the players were on his team. He had a different agenda than coaching football. I mean, it was a name hire, I think, to begin with. I think. Let's see. What was his record? I think he won 2 games his first year, and that was it. And, I guess you could put him in the top 5. We could have the debate whether that's enough time or not. But he definitely wasn't ready to coach the NFL.
I take back what I said. In some cases, you don't need a body of work. Urban Meyer deserves to be on the list. Not a question. I was a complete fool from the onset coaching the Jacksonville Jaguars. They draft Trevor Lawrence, and he says he's going to be in a quarterback competition to see whether he gets the starting job. Well, what happens if he loses the competition? What does that do for his confidence? You're going to diminish him as a leader right off the bat. Okay, right off the bat. And just all his moves, his actions, everything about him, not traveling back with his team, on the flight and staying behind. Just, too many variables.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. I was about to say, you can't just include Urban Meyer. I mean, these great college coaches that go into the league. We got to talk about Nick Saban and his stint in Miami. We got to talk about Steve Spurrier and his stint in Washington. These were all great coaches that won at the highest level in college, went to the NFL and stunk it up. So it's just too many names like that that fall in that category to just put Urban Meyer that's number 1. Come on,
James, and also. Imagine the Cowboys had a different owner than Jerry Jones, and Jimmy Johnson was a coach of the Cowboys, and he was 1-15 his first season and got fired after 1 year. Chances are Johnson would have gone back to college, and we would have been talking about him being on this list.
It's a point. It's a good point too. I mean, 1-15 is nothing. But again, I mean, Dallas was at the bottom of the bottom in that draft picks they got. They had some insight that maybe they get better. But Jack, I agree with you. I mean, Spurrier was another one. Yeah.
Spurrier had a great line. Matt Rule, Matt Rule, that's a good point. He hasn't been much since he's gone, to Nebraska, from Baylor to the Panthers to
Yeah,
Nebraska.
he wasn't good. Right. He wasn't that good when he went. Yeah. So he went to Baylor, was decent. The Panthers got him. We were all the fans were like, why would you bring in someone that does not even have that? It's not like they were getting Kirby Smart or somebody to come in. They got somebody that was just mediocre. And then he went back, and now, like you said, he's with Nebraska. I really think Matt Rule should have been on that list, honestly.
The Giants,
across the board, not
were
because of
very
just win
interested.
losses, but because of how the coaching was done.
But the Giants were very interested in having Matt Rule become their coach as well. He had a choice, actually, between the Giants and the Panthers. That for whatever reason, he was in like big time demand.
Yeah, he was.
They dodged a bullet. The Giants did.
He did coach in the NFL before, not as a head coach, but he did have NFL experience, and that was one of the reasons why he was sought after. So, okay, we got the top five. We've done the AFC East, what we thought their games would be, the AFC North. Let's go to the AFC West. And I'm not going to give you what they projected the games, how many games they win. I want you to project how many games you think they'll win this year. And of course, we're going to start with the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs didn't have the greatest regular season. Of course, they won the Super Bowl. There's a little bit of stuff floating around, off-field issues with police and drinking and all kinds of stuff that's happening. Reeves he's one of the best coaches there is. I mean, there's no doubt. Andy, I would say that. I would say he's maybe the best coach in football right now. They probably got the best quarterback in the league right now. But there are questions. And the questions is not whether they'll win the division. I think they will. But last year they had a 11-5 record. What do you think? Do you think they matched an 11-win record this year? Start off with James. What do you think?
Well, it's just hard not to give the champs the upper leg. I just, at some point you fall off. I just don't see them falling off. They kept Kelsey. They got their defensive entrenchment in Jones, Chandler Jones on the back end, and I think you got to get a leg up and maybe win 11. They only won 11 games this past season and won the Super Bowl. So if they just win their division again or get in as a wild card, I still see them maybe 10, 11 games as well.
Think they'll match your 11-game wins of last year? You think they'll match it? Okay. Yeah. What do you think, Jack?
It's too early. So whatever I say doesn't count as a definite prediction to hold me to at this point. But yeah, they should at least match 11-6. Are they really going to fall to 10-7? 10-7 is kind of a little mediocre. You're just really a little over 500. I would think they would be in the 12-5 range, meaning anywhere from 11-6 to 13-4. Putting in that gap to go to actually 10-7 is kind of. I don't think they're quite going to slip, to that point.
Sonia, your thoughts? I mean, is this off-field stuff, is that going to bother them when it comes to the regular season? Is Rashid Rice even going to be there? There's some questions here. There really is. So what do you think? Did the Kansas City Chiefs keep it together, or did they start falling apart a little bit?
I don't know. I was just looking at their schedule while you all were all giving your perspective. And in my opinion, their schedule does not look that difficult. Except for a couple of divisional rivals that they have that we already know about, it's not really much to be like, oh, they're going to really be struggling. I mean, we see some teams that go to the Super Bowl and they kind of hit a slump right afterwards, especially when you're talking about off-field issues like the ones with Rashid Rice. They did a lot of trading. They let Hill go, which is a big hit because Tyreek is one of their big runners. And so that may be a missing spot. But I think collectively, if the offensive line can stay solid like they looked, I'm going to be honest. I was surprised they went to the Super Bowl because, like you said, they had just a decent regular season. It kind of seems like towards the end, they made a significant push where it counted and just got themselves all the way to the freaking Super Bowl. So I think, honestly, next season, with the 18-week, I think they may win a couple of additional games than what they had this season. I think sometimes when you have behavioral issues like the ones that are going on around them, that may be what they need to ignite them to play even better, to kind of overcome the drama that's going on off field. And so that's just my decision. They may win 15 games this season, only drop about 3.
Wow.
Sonia made a great point about the Chiefs getting it together for the playoffs. People forget they were struggling throughout the year. They lost a very big regular season game late in the year that they absolutely needed to win against the Raiders in Kansas City.
Yep,
and they were beaten soundly in that game, and they had their work cut out for them, but something about their championship pedigree, they got it together for the playoffs. Teams usually can't just turn a switch on and off, but they happen to do it. I don't know, was it the Chief mystique or whatever, and they win another Super Bowl.
This is to me where coaching matters, especially in the NFL. Coaching in the NFL is unbelievably affects a team. And when you don't have what you had the year before, how do you change and still win? Andy Reeves, of course, he went to the running game instead of the passing game. The receivers weren't what he had before. And to me, that was one of the smartest moves he could make. If he relied on the passing, I don't think he would have made the Super Bowl. I think they'll win one more game, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a little tease. I don't think they win the Super Bowl this year. I don't think they go to the Super Bowl.
I don't think that. I don't think that.
And that we'll do later on as we get closer to the season. Maybe the first week we talk about who we think is going anywhere. But of course, what do I know? Last year I picked the worst team in the division, the San Diego Chargers. I thought they were going to championship, and they win a whole 4 games. I guess that's probably one of the worst picks I've ever made. New coach, you got Jim Harbaugh's back. You lose a wide receiver, you lose your starting running back. They're going to change their philosophy. I think they're at San Diego be more physical and all this good stuff. It's Harbaugh's first year. Do they improve from 4 wins? I would think so. I'm not sure. In the first year if Harbaugh can turn that program around. But I don't think they'll be as bad as last year just because of coaching change and is maybe a better coach than Hackett was. So, Jack, what do you think? You were there when I predicted the Chargers to go to championship last year.
Well, you picked Miami and the Chargers in the AFC championship game. The Dolphins were trending in that direction for a while at least, but the Chargers were a big disappointment. I think this is a rebuilding year for the Chargers. I think Jim Harbaugh's extremely secure in his position, not only with the ownership, but with the fan base, and he's kind of tearing the team down a little bit, keeping some of the key pieces, obviously, on defense. Rebuilding year, maybe 6-11 or something like that.
What are your thoughts, Sonia?
I think that a lot has changed since Jim was last in the NFL. I think the teams have changed. Well, players have changed. I think the times have changed. We've seen a lot of coaching rules that are changed in the league. And I think it is going to be a period of acclimation for Harbaugh coming back into the NFL and making, not significantly so because he was here before, but I think he's been gone long enough that he himself is going to have to acclimate. I think the Chargers may get maybe 2 additional wins, but I think they definitely are going to not be too far removed from where they were this season as far as where they stand in the division.
James, a lot of people forget that Jim Harbaugh actually turned the San Francisco 49ers into a Super Bowl team. We're ahead at the half before the lights went out. They were beating They were beating the Baltimore Ravens and his brother.
No, the Ravens had a big lead in that game. Then the lights went out and enabled the 49ers.
The opposite way?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I had a 50-50 shot. I blew it. But
you kept it all in the family, Harbaugh. It's all in the family.
So James, anyway, a lot of people forget that he had a running quarterback. He was using RPOs before these guys were using RPOs. I mean, he built the team around the former quarterback that they had there that can't get back into the league right now, and really didn't want to get back in the league anyway. But anyway, I don't even want to mention his name because that stirs a bunch of controversy. Let's just say that Harbaugh comes in, his first thing is to change the culture, right? You want to make a team culture change. You want to be a winner, blah, blah, blah. So I'm with Jack and Sonia here. It's going to take at least a year before, that the Chargers really start building something. And I'm kind of with them. How about you? Do you think that Chargers can do much better than 6-10?
I mean, maybe 1 or 2 games. I totally agree with you guys as well. Jim Harbaugh, I've always been a fan. Let's go all the way back to him as a player when he played for Chicago, and then he went to Indianapolis. He was captain comeback. I mean, they went to the AFC Championship with him. He almost got past that game to get to the Super Bowl. He's always been a winner. I think you go back to Stanford. He was a great coach there as well. Toby Gerhardt and a couple other players he had there under his wing, and then he went to San Francisco, like you said, and turned that team around and made him into a contender. Now, mind you, that team had weapons on both sides of the field. They had great defensive, great linebackers. They drafted well, but it took time to get to that, and it's probably going to take time with San Diego as well to get to that point. Now, they made a great draft. They had a great draft.
Los Angeles, not San Diego. Between you and Mac are calling them the San Diego
You're right.
Chargers. That's the same thing as when Muhammad Ali changed his name from Cassius Clay. People continue to call him Cassius Clay. Come on.
Yes.
It ain't LA Chargers and not the San Diego Chargers. What's with the two
You
of you?
have to forgive me. It's hard. It's like saying the Washington Redskins. I mean, I forget the Commanders or the Cleveland Guardians. I mean, it's just hard to remember this kind of stuff. You're right. Thank you for the reminder. But yes, I do think the Los Angeles Chargers have an opportunity to get better, but it's going to take 2 or 3 years and maybe some acquisitions and free agency, a little more experience with the team. But they do have a solid foundation. I think they're going to have Justin Herbert there as a quarterback. That's a great thing to start with. And then you have the tackle they just drafted, and Joe, what's his name? Joe Alt.
Yeah. You know, they drafted him ahead of Malik Neighbors. Would you have done that? That shows what Harbaugh's looking to build both sides of the line, even though he has Bosa and Mack on defense, the offensive line. But if you had a weapon like Malik Neighbors for Justin Herbert, that had to be mouth-watering. But they took Joe Alt, the offensive lineman. I think that was a good move by the Chargers, personally.
Yeah, me too. I think he's never, if you look at his history, he's never had a player like Malik Neighbors. I think his mindset, you can see what he picked up in acquisition. You got J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and they got another running back. So it's pretty much it's going to be run by committee and throw the ball to who you have there. You got Quentin Johnson, and you got a couple other wide receivers there, DJ Chark. These aren't great guys. These are middle-of-the-road guys. But if they can block, because when he was in San Francisco, he had Michael Crabtree. That guy wasn't. I mean, he was projected. He got picked high, but he wasn't a great wide receiver. All wide receivers, but they need a great running game to go with. Max shaking his head, but I think they're going to be better, but maybe two.
Because you're still popping, James. You get excited, you start popping there. Maybe it's the excitement in your voice.
He probably needs to go to the backstage and come back in. He probably needs to be removed from the backstage and come back in.
Let me tell you what intrigued me before the draft with Harbaugh, what he could have done. He kept saying, J.J. McCarthy's the best player in the draft. He should go number 1. That was his quarterback at Michigan. If he really felt that way, that McCarthy was a sure thing, when the Chargers went number 5, he could have had a deal in place to trade Justin Herbert, and there may have been a team that would have given 3 first-round draft choices to get Justin Herbert. So you trade Herbert, you get 3 number 1s, and you draft McCarthy. If you really feel your guy at Michigan was a sure thing. And that's how you build a team. It would have been a gutsy move, but, you know, he never seriously considered doing it for all the talk about his guy at Michigan, McCarthy.
Do you really trade for does somebody give him 3 first-round choices?
For Justin Herbert. No, for Justin Herbert, a team that's down there drafting in the 20s. There has to be a team out there that would have been so thrilled to get Justin Herbert as their franchise quarterback that they may have given 3 number ones for him.
That's a lot, Jack. I don't know.
It's a lot. But
I don't know. That's a little iffy, but I get what you're saying. He's kind of throwing smoke out there, saying JJ McCarthy is the best and then he doesn't even try to go get him in the draft. You know, you're all saying that's a great pick. Alt is a better pick than Malik Neighbors. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I don't know if Alt's going to be able to transition and become a pro tackle. And I know Malik Neighbors will be transitioned and become a good NFL wide receiver at the least.
Malik Neighbors will be outstanding. If you get anyone to throw him the ball.
That is an explosion. Well, you have Justin Herbert that you said you could get three draft choices for throwing. I mean, I don't know if that was the right move or not. You say it is, but if Malik Neighbors has a huge season and San Diego is struggling to run the ball, maybe their minds will change. Then I don't know. We'll see.
No. At this point, that's done. I'm just saying there was a path to get J.J. McCarthy. Think of what Justin Herbert would have gotten on the trade market. You know, if you consider Justin Herbert one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's still young, and even though he's hurt last year, he's not an injury-prone quarterback on balance.
Well, how long has he been in the league so far, Jack?
Something like about 6 years, right, guys?
What?
Yeah, somewhere around there. But Matt, you just lauded. Am I talking better now, or am I breaking up?
Yes.
Good. So you just lauded Jim Harbaugh as a great coach.
I didn't say he was great coach. What did I say? He was great. I never said he was great coach.
You're inferring he was great now.
He brought San Francisco. He brought San Francisco to the Super Bowl. A lot of coaches.
He has his own formula with how he likes to do things. Why wouldn't you think that he's doing good? The same. He's on the same trajectory to go with what he's got now. What he's doing now.
The question was it a mistake not to get Malik Neighbors? That's what I'm commenting on.
It's not a mistake.
We'll find out, won't we? We'll find out. You say that now. I say maybe it was. So we'll end up finding out.
Never win a game in June. You never win a season in June. You never see what players are really like, even in the OTAs, until they actually play that first down.
Very true. Very true.
If Joe Alt's another Zach Martin, another Joe Thomas type of player, those guys have more value than virtually any wide receiver you're going to get.
I would agree to a point, unless that wide receiver is part of a Super Bowl team that goes through a couple Super Bowls. But I would agree, longevity-wise, Jack, you're 100% correct. 100% correct when you say that. So anyway, interesting. So let's get to the next team we're going to talk about, the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson's gone. And there's no doubt in my mind that Bo Nix is a starting quarterback. Denver had a so-so year at 8-9. Second year under Sean Payton. Do they improve? Do they get to a wild card? Are they 9 or 10 win team? What do you think, Jack?
Well, what were they last year? 8-9, I believe, last year, and they got off to a disastrous start. Their defense was awful. But they got better as the year went along, their defense, a lot better. And I like Sean Payton as a coach. I'm sorry, James. I mean, you have a better book on Sean Payton than I do, being a Saint fan, so I would defer to you a little more than me. But I think he's elevating the Broncos. They're going to win more than they lose. They're going to go 9-8, 10-7. I kind of feel I could see him going 10-7 and Bo Nix having a successful rookie season. Bo Nix has to start. The two guys competing with him are dreadful, Jason Stidham and Zach Wilson. I mean, unless Zach Wilson all of a sudden looks lights out in practice all of a sudden, and he's really the type of player the Jets forecasted he was, and he just had bad coaching. It's got to be Bo Nix, and I just see Sean Payton making the Broncos a perennial playoff team. And I think there's a good chance it starts this year. I think there's a good chance they do sneak in as a wild card.
I mean, Sonia, your thoughts? I mean, he says Sean Payton is going to elevate the team. Sean Payton has had a lot of problems so far being the head coach over there. I mean, I guess he's got to get his people in place. He's the GM/head coach, basically. So, Bo Nix, I guarantee you, he was a major reason they got Bo Nix. He sees maybe a little Drew Brees in him. What do you think?
I mean, I do see. I mean, even early on, it was predicted that Bo Nix would be what Sean Payton would want for that organization because he is supposedly comparable to Drew Brees. But even when Drew Brees was under Payton, the first onset, there still is that acclimation period that I always talk about from the college to the NFL. And I feel like I don't see Denver getting 10 wins. I mean, their schedule, their division alone is very competitive, with the exception of maybe the Raiders. They may be able to actually beat them. But I don't think that this is going to be the year that they have a blowout season, maybe next season, because you still have to bring this quarterback on and acclimate him. Now, Bo Nix, of course, is projected to be this outstanding, I guess, if he blows it out like CJ Stroud, then we're talking about a different team. But probably about the same as they had before, maybe 1 or 2 games less is my prediction.
Or you think they might drop a little bit this year? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure, James. I know Russell Wilson is now an average quarterback. Basically, in my eyes, he's an average quarterback. He may be a starter, but he's not a great quarterback anymore. He has his moments. Bo Nix is untested in the NFL. He was very accurate in college. What are your thoughts? Do they get another win, or do they fall back a little bit?
First of all, I'd like to say we should temper the comparisons of Bo Nix to Drew Brees, because Drew Brees obviously is a Hall of Famer first ballot coming out. And he's a much shorter quarterback. He's 6 foot, if that, with on his toes. I mean, this guy actually used to stand on his toes behind an offensive line if you actually look back at some highlights. But Drew Brees is a great quarterback. So let's see what Bo Nix does against NFL defenses. I mean, he started out in the SEC, didn't do so well there. He went out to the Pacific and did well against questionable defenses out there in a nice offense, NFL offense, spread offense type of thing. I mean, he was very accurate, but again, a lot of dink and dunks, mid-range throws. It was decent. The traits, I don't know. Sean Payton has yet to be a winner outside of the Drew Brees, Sean Payton combo. So it's yet to be determined. And I love Sean Payton, especially what he's done for New Orleans. But again, facts and facts. The same thing you could be said about the guy, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. When there's 2 split up, what did he do? I mean, facts are facts. You got to look at everything. I mean, we could say there, but before
the teams were declining, both the Saints and Patriots, James, they were declining anyway. There was some slippage in both teams.
True.
And look what Sean Payton did with Denver last year. How terrible their defensive unit was, and the way they got better as the year went around, and the way the whole team got better, and he even got more out of Russell Wilson than Wilson provided the year before. That's how I look at it. Are they trending in the right direction, the Broncos? That's what I want to know.
And this is where it's yet to be determined with the quarterback that's coming out of college, transitioning to the NFL. And so I would say I give them probably close to the same record at this moment. I think they need a few more weapons. I look at their roster. The roster's not like you said. They what he could do, he did the best with what he had. And I didn't see much of a major transition to say that they're going to move up 4 or 5 games. I think they're around the same thing. And I mean, it's written.
James, let me point one difference that, James, when you pointed out Brees and Brady with their coaches, there's a big difference. Belichick developed Brady to an extent because that was his only quarterback at New England. He had him as a rookie. Drew Brees came as an established quarterback from the San Diego. They were called San Diego at the time. San Diego Chargers to New Orleans. And the only reason he got Drew Brees, in large part, because the Saints had drafted the Chargers had drafted Phillip Rivers, and Brees hurt his shoulder the last game of the season. But he still did a good job with Brees. We can't ignore that.
Yep.
Well, I really don't know. I think the Denver Broncos, the way they're set up right now, they're a good team. And when you take a rookie quarterback and put him on a good team as opposed to put him on a bad team, they have somewhat of advantage, right? I mean, there is a system in place somewhat, not totally yet, that Sean Payton put in place last year. I think they do a little bit better. I think maybe they get to 10 wins. Maybe they do that. And that's just, and you know what that is? That's just coaching. And you could say Sean Payton was good because of Drew Brees. Sean Payton coached the league many years before Drew Brees got in the NFL. I mean, he was assistant coaches and some very, very established, under some very established head coaches, very good head coaches. And, I think Sean Payton, if you win, it's like a millionaire. If you won $1 million, if you are a millionaire, you lose $1 million. You still know how to make $1 million, right? If you're a winning coach in the NFL, if you can get to the Super Bowl, if you got to the Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl, you still have some kind of track where you can get there again. So I think that the Denver Broncos will be a little bit better.
Yeah, but I'm going to say just to go back to my argument is that I like to see it done, happen without, like you said, he's never been a head coach without Drew Brees and has winning success for it. And we can have the argument with Phil Jackson in basketball. He's never coached a team that didn't have some major star players on it. And he's won with them. He's won a lot of great games with them, but he's never been he's had cherry picked teams. And I'm not saying that the Saints were like that.
If that's true, James, if that's true, then every NFL coach that has a great team would win the Super Bowl, right? Or a great quarterback would win the Super Bowl. That's not the case. Every NBA coach that had a great NBA team would win the championship. That's not the case. That's just
James, I just want to point out with Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan started out to play baseball. Without Michael Jordan, the Bulls won twice as many regular season games as they lost. That was a great coaching job. Just like the great Vince Lombardi, when he left the Packers and all that talent he developed, he went to the Washington Redskins, who were called that at the time, and he led them to their first winning season in 14 years. Even though they were only 7-5-2, the idea he bumped them up a bit.
So, I mean, you got a valid point, James, but you also got to look on the other side. Just because you got the best quarterback or the best whatever doesn't mean you win the championship. So, if that was true, then, all of LeBron James, great teams would have won everywhere he went when he brought the vets there. So let's get to the Raiders. Very interesting team here. They worked really hard to build up their defense, right? They're going to have a great watch them. They're going to have a great defensive line this year in their division. And I think they're going to have a very good defense. The question is quarterback. You got last year's guy. I can't even remember his name right now. And you got Mr. Mustache.
Gardner Minshew.
They just got Gardner Minshew. So anyway, they picked.
They had him last year.
I don't think they did, Jack.
He was their quarterback last year.
Is that true, guys?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
My word.
I thought he was with another team last year.
He was with Indianapolis.
I thought he was with the Colts. I thought he was with the Colts last year.
Oh no, I'm sorry. He was with the Colts, and then he went. Yeah, he went to the Raiders. Wait a second, you got me confused. Right, he went to the Raiders now.
Right, so he's battling.
Yeah, sorry about that, Mac.
That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. That's all right. No big deal. So anyway, we don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be. The young kid that started last year for him,
Aiden O'Connell.
O'Connell, thank you. A good Irish guy. I should know that. Caden O'Connell, or is it going to be Gardner Minshew? I mean, Minshew has been there. He's been a NFL quarterback. He has won with some teams. So that's going to be a big decision. I think their defense will play well. They were 8-9 last year. They just hired Antonio Pierce as their full-time head coach. Yeah. What do you think happens, James? Do they get better than 8-9 or worse?
Yeah, I do. I think they win 10 games. They got two of the best tight ends, I think, and Mayer and the one they just drafted this year out of Georgia. So, man,
Brock Bowers.
Right.
Brock Bowers. So, and they're going to expect them to run the ball. I mean, I'm looking at them to rely more on their defense more so than their offense. And I just think that there's a lot of discipline with this coach, with this team, and they can win this division. I mean, I don't like Broncos, and I don't like the Chargers to win a lot of games. I just think they have an opportunity to be able to win 10 games with their defense. And they still have Devontae Adams as well. So it's really, I think I see them winning 3 more games. I can see them winning 10 games. Excuse me. They were 9. What were they? 9 and 9? Yeah, I can see them winning 2 more games.
Okay, Sonia, you agree with that? Good morning to Matt Henry. Right, Sonia.
So I know, first of all, the Raiders are gangsters. Let's be clear. I mean, Antonio Pierce with the Suge Knight look and everything, and he's, from the West Coast and all that stuff. They literally brought the hype to that team in a time that they needed it. Devontae Adams is still there, despite there being rumors that, they were trying to get him up to join Aaron Rodgers. And so, that Devontae staying is going to be huge for them. No matter who the quarterback is, they're going to make it work. Like James said, I do agree. They did a lot of work defensively. And let's not forget who they have as an assistant coach, Marvin Lewis, who in his own right has a lot of NFL experience when he was with the Lions. And so I'm excited to see what the Raiders do. I'm not saying they're going to, blow the whole division out, but they're playing the NFC South this year, which they very may well sweep with the team they have. You're also playing, they may even do better in their own division. I know they have the South, but I predict they at least at a minimum will not finish at the bottom of their division like they did in the past. I think they're going to finish probably in second place. But not, they could surprise us all and finish first. But I'm excited to see what the Raiders do coming up next season. Oh, and my cousin plays there too, Brandon Parker. So shout out to him.
Well, there you go. So you think they win more than 10 games or more?
No, 10 games. 10 or the same.
Okay. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, sure, Sonia. The Raiders are going to win 10 games, and the Panthers are going to make the playoffs as a wild card. Yeah,
we
sure.
are, and you heard it here first.
You're always stuck, Sonia, on these interim coaches who barely keep their head above water, like Steve Wilkes and Antonio Pierce. Look, Antonio Pierce didn't do a bad job.
Steve Wilkes caught a bad one. Let's be clear. He was decent. Steve Wilkes was decent. He got shafted.
Marvin Lewis, by the way, was a longtime head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Bengals.
Playoffs, and they'd always lose the first game, but he didn't do a bad job when he was a head coach. He does bring a wealth of experience. I like the Raider defense. Antonio Pierce, great linebacker in his day. He brings a certain chemistry to that defense. I don't mean he's a bad hire. I may have hired him myself, but I think that was a fair hire by the owner, Mark Davis, because a few years before that, they had an interim coach, Rick Bisaccia, who replaced John Gruden. Bisaccia took the Raiders to the playoffs, and then they fired him when he did a great job as an interim coach, and that upset the players. I think the players stepped forward. They said to Mark Davis, we like Antonio Pierce. We want him to continue to be our coach. And I do like that late season win when they won at Kansas City. I really like the way their defense is functioning, but I don't see them as a good team. They don't have a good quarterback. Gardner Minshew.
That's why I said
like maybe an 8 and 9 team if their defense plays well. The defense has to play well for them to be 8 and 9. Maybe I could stretch it out to 9 and 8, perhaps. I just don't see them as any type of a threat. They lost Josh Jacobs on top of it. Josh Jacobs went to the Packers. That was their big running back. They did get Brock Bowers.
And let me just say, I had Marvin Lewis mixed up with Caldwell. My apologies. In my mind, I was thinking the Bengals. And I just, I knew where he was. He was from the North, no matter what.
Yeah.
But
And that's the
Yeah.
point. Jim Caldwell, whatever happened to him, he had a winning record as a Lion head coach. They fire him, and then the Lions are losing for a lot of years after that. Why didn't Jim Caldwell ever get back as a head coach? He took an Indianapolis Colts team to the Super Bowl before that. I mean,
the Panthers were interested in him a couple of seasons ago. I think they actually interviewed Caldwell. I don't know what happened. I was really rooting for him to be chosen, but it didn't happen.
So, but I guess all three of you think they'll at least improve a little bit. I don't know. I think.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Need a quarterback, Mac.
I agree with you, Jack. I do agree with you. At least a good starting quarterback. Minshew is not good. He's like great. He's almost good, but he's not good. And I agree with you. And I think defense can win you some games, and if the defense wins you 8 games like it did last year, I think that's great. You need a quarterback to get the ball, at least get the ball to him. I think the Raiders made a mistake not drafting a quarterback last year.
Well, they couldn't draft a quarterback. The Raiders drafted number 13 overall, and there were 5 possible quarterbacks who could go high enough for them. And the 5th one was taken 1 spot ahead of them at number 12, Bo Nix by the Broncos. By that time, they were out. But the pick of Brock Bowers might turn out to be a blessing in disguise. The Jets, who were going number 10, were given an offer by the Rams. If the Rams wanted to move up and take Bowers, they offered to flip-flop number 10 for number 18 and give a 2nd and 3rd and 4th round pick even to get Bowers. That's how badly they wanted it. And the Jets didn't want to move from number 10 to number 18 because they felt they wouldn't get the impact offensive lineman to protect Aaron Rodgers. That might turn out to be a big mistake.
There are a lot of quarterbacks out there besides the top 5, and I think they should have drafted a quarterback. I don't know what they got, but below O'Connell and below Minshew. But there were still some good quarterbacks that were potentially good quarterbacks that they could have went after, a little high profile. Some of them dropped way down into the 4th and 5th rounds, if I remember correctly. But anyway, listen, I think the Raiders will have a decent year. Again, this is really Antonio Pierce's his debut as a head coach, and I think they'll have a decent year this year. A little baseball for you. We're getting close to the top of the hour. We all know the story about Trevor Bauer, how he was suspended, ended up becoming 184 games because of sexual assault allegations against him. He did settle with that first woman, even though there is still questions whether it's factual or not. There are text messages from the first woman that say that he was going to be the next victim. He fought the second woman who came forward. She's facing 16 years in jail for fraud and possible extortion as she tried to get a lot of money from him. So she's in a lot of trouble. Bauer's been pitching in the Japanese league where he was an all-star. He's been dominating the Mexican leagues as a pitcher right now. So he stayed busy on a suspension. His suspension is up, and no team has really made an offer to him yet. There are some attorneys out there that think that he has a case to sue the MLB if he isn't taken by a team, and are maybe encouraging some teams that the MLB should encourage at least to start making offers to Bauer. Bauer was a Cy Young Award winner. He was one heck of a pitcher in 2020. Does any team take a chance on this guy? And I mean, there are a lot of teams out there that are definitely in the playoff hunt that need pitchers. And let me swing to Jack first. Jack, I mean, if you're the GM of the Yankees, do you take a shot with Trevor Bauer?
I wouldn't, for the simple reason Garrett Cole was his college teammate, and by all accounts, I don't know is it accurate, and Garrett Cole would never say it publicly, but reportedly Garrett Cole thought Trevor Bauer was a complete jerk, not a good teammate at all. Terry Francona, the Indian manager, once came out to the mound to take Trevor Bauer out. Trevor Bauer throws the ball into the center field stands. You know, things like that. And it's more than one woman. Okay, the one woman who fabricated things, Trevor Bauer was a complete victim in that case. But these teams do their due diligence, and there's got to be a bit of a trail on Trevor Bauer. Maybe he didn't do anything illegally, but all the moral issues, what he brings to a team, comes down to whether they're willing to take a chance on him. Has he changed? Is he contrite now? I don't know. You'd have to speak to Trevor Bauer. You'd have to get a good feel of what he is. You'd have to speak to other people in the organization, maybe some of the other players, and see how they would feel about it.
Sonia, Trevor Bauer has come out and said, I made mistakes in the past. I'm trying to become a better human being. A lot of players in professional sports have gotten second chances. If you're a playoff contending team, do you take the shot and sign somebody like Trevor Bauer that could improve your pitching staff?
I was just about to mention that we've seen everything from the situation with the Chiefs and Rashee Rice, Von Miller. I could go on. Deshaun Watson. Like, seriously, the NFL and the MLB and any professional sport, at the end of the day, it's whatever makes them successful to bring in the revenue. That's what it's going to boil down to. If you're in a position that you need a pitcher, you're going to sign whoever can throw that ball and get you the wins. Unfortunately, morals do take a back seat sometimes. And, there's a lot of the Me Too movement. There's a lot of BLM movements and all these things that everyone mentally wants to prepare society better. But in the end of the day, those are all field issues. Those are all court issues. And at the end of the day, it's like whoever can get the wins, bring the crowds, and bring the money. So with that being said, and despite all the other people I've given examples, and I'm sure there's way more, Jerry Jones himself, I always tease and say Dallas runs a work release camp, because anybody that's having run-ins with the law, Jerry Jones will give you a chance. So with that being said, in the MLB, even though he's actually at least openly say, hey, I made mistakes, he's seeking repentance from that standpoint, and he's moving on. He's human. No one's perfect. So, yeah, I'd sign him, barring any future issues, and keep it moving.
James, there's been a lot of great players that had issues, right? Or even what Billy Martin, Reggie Jackson had some problems before, and when he came to the Yankees, saying certain things openly and tugging at managers and maybe GMs and owners at their last frail nerves. But he was a great ball player, and these were ball players that were in their own right very good at what they did. Trevor Bauer, Cy Young winner. The 2 days after he won the last game was a 2-hitter, 8 strikeouts over 7 innings, a win. He gets suspended. It was originally 364 games, got dropped down to 362, got dropped down to 184 games for some reason, whether it was an appeal or whatever. Again, a lot of players, as Sonia said, have problems off the field, and Trevor Bauer is one of them. I don't know. Do you take the guy at his word? Is this worth a chance, or is it bad press? What are you looking for as a GM there?
I mean, if you're a GM, you have a little bit of leverage. If you see, talent is almost always going to trump off the field issues. If you're a player that's like really good, you can present something to the table, talented. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes. I mean, the guys that have more talent, they're the ones that are most forgiven. If you're not good, if you're mediocre, they're going to kick you to the side, and whatever happens to you happens to you. But if this guy's really good at pitching and it's something that they need, maybe you give him the minimum. You bring him in. Is he a relief pitcher, or what is he? I'm sorry.
However, you know what the problem, James, is? I think it's the Colin Kaepernick syndrome. Teams don't want the distraction. You're bringing a Trevor Bauer. It's a distraction. Everyone's going to be talking about him the way we are. Players, management, they don't want to know of it. The talent's got to be so great for you to put up with it. A Patrick Mahomes, whatever, everyone is going to want him as their quarterback, even though, like Deshaun Watson was brought in. They knew the Browns was going to be a distraction, but they thought it was such a great talent. It would be worth it. Is it worth it for Trevor Bauer? Listen, Trevor Bauer at his best is an outstanding pitcher. Now you're dealing with your sponsorship. A certain sponsor is going to pull the plug on their involvement with the team. I don't know. It's just not worth the fatigue for teams. That's what the problem is.
Well,
Those would have been my question.
great points. Great points. But do you want to win the World Series, or do you want to worry about whether you're, I mean, that's the question, right? And, you know what I think, guys? I think it all comes down to whether you are willing to do anything. And this is, I don't think this is worse than some other stories we've heard. Are you willing to do almost anything to win a World Series? And a lot of people are. Trevor Bauer, listen, was, as Jack said, was a great pitcher. And not only that, he hasn't gone somewhere and sulked. He's kept busy. He's pitching in the Japanese league. He's pitching down in the Central American leagues. I mean, this guy is staying busy. And he said he'd come back at league minimum if that's what it took. So he seems contrite. I don't know.
I would give him another chance. If I were a team, I'd give him another chance. And I'd see what the blowback would be. I'd speak to some sponsors beforehand, but the stuff, I do my due diligence. Are there other cases that could emerge? Okay, is there anything hanging over his head right now? If it's not, Sonia makes a great point. The NFL takes cases like this all the time, and guys keep going back to their team. So why not baseball? I mean, that's how they could point it out. Any team in baseball, look at the NFL.
I agree. So, folks, we're done with the show today. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of football, as always. A quick story about MLB, and we're on our way. Of course, the hockey tomorrow night, Game 7. First time in like 5 years that they've had a Game 7. Edmonton Oilers have really made this exciting, and hopefully it'll be an exciting Game 7. You guys have a great Sunday.